If you bought an iPhone 17 in the last 6 months, you might have just paid the Apple loyalty tax. That $800 phone you proudly unbox? Multiple leaks and supply chain reports suggest Apple knew exactly what it was doing, because right behind it sits a phone that could make your purchase look like a bad deal. The iPhone 17e rumored to land at just $599 could steamroll not only Android flagships, but also Apple's own lineup. And near the end of this video, I'm going to tell you about one hidden feature Apple may be holding back for the 17e. If they actually ship it, the entire iPhone lineup stops making sense overnight. So before you upgrade, or before you regret the upgrade, you already may listen to this all the way through. Let's start with the real betrayal. Performance. For years, Apple's playbook for cheaper iPhones was simple. Recycle last year's chip, trim a few features, and slap on a lower price. Budget phone, budget brain. But the leaks around the iPhone 17e tell a very different story. Multiple credible reports say the iPhone 17e won't get some leftover processor. It's expected to ship with a chip from the 19 series, the same generation powering the main iPhone 17 lineup. Pause and consider what that actually means. Your app speed, your gaming performance, your everyday responsiveness on paper, nearly identical to Apple's $800 iPhone 17. For around $599, that puts the budget iPhone shoulder to shoulder with Apple's flagship in benchmarks. In real life, you'd struggle to tell them apart in raw speed, app launch times, and gameplay smoothness, especially with Apple's efficiency and sustained performance gains on newer silicon. And it gets worse if you just bought an Android flagship. Those same leaks suggest this $599 iPhone 17e could outperform phones like the Galaxy S26 that cost $1,100 or more. Apple knows exactly how powerful its chips are. They know a mid-range iPhone with a current-gen processor is an Android flagship killer. So why didn't they launch that phone first? Because of the Apple loyalty tax, Apple understands something brutal about human psychology. The most loyal fans buy early, and they buy high. They'll pay $800, $1,000, or more to have the new thing on day one. Those are the people Apple quietly charges extra by holding back value that shows up later in cheaper models. The iPhone 17 is shaping up to be the perfect example of that strategy. And performance is just the beginning. Let's talk design, because Apple also knows that status matters almost as much as speed. No one wants to look like they bought the cheap iPhone. That's why leaks point to the iPhone 17e getting the dynamic island, the same modern camera cutout and UI that live on Apple's higher-end models. The old, dated notch? Gone. So instead of that chunky rectangular notch blocking the top of your screen, you get the sleek, animated pill-shaped island that reacts to your music, calls, timers, navigation, and live activities. From the front, at a glance, this so-called budget phone is going to look like every other modern iPhone. Pair that with an old display, deep blacks, punchy colors, high contrast, and visually. Most people won't be able to tell if you're holding the expensive iPhone 17 or the cheaper 17e, and that's on purpose. If Apple can sell you a phone that looks premium, feels premium, and performs like a flagship but costs mid-range money, they don't just win against Android. They make their own $800 iPhone suddenly look very hard to justify. Now let's move to what most people care about beyond benchmarks. The camera. Reports suggest the iPhone 17e is getting a serious front camera. Upgrade an 18-megapixel selfie camera with center stage-like auto framing. What does that mean day to day? Sharper selfies, cleaner video calls, better TikToks, Reels, and shorts in a front camera smart enough to keep you in frame when you move. Imagine shooting in landscape, talking naturally, pacing a little, and the camera keeps you perfectly centered without you thinking about it. For creators or anyone who posts a lot on social, that's huge, especially on a phone that isn't the top-of-the-line model. Put it all together, and the iPhone 17e is already embarrassing the standard iPhone 17 on value. A current Gen A19 series chip, dynamic island design, OLED display, an upgraded 18MP selfie camera with intelligent tracking, all rumored around $599. So what's the catch? There has to be one. This is where everything changes. The screen refresh rate. Right now, leaks are split. And this one detail might decide whether the iPhone 17e is just a good value or the single easiest. Purchase in Apple's entire lineup, option 1. Apple caps the iPhone 17e at 60 Hz. That's the classic refresh rate most older iPhones use. Your display refreshes 60 times per second. It's fine. It works. But once you've used 90 Hz or 120 Hz, 60 Hz feels a little sluggish. Scrolling looks less smooth. Animations feel less fluid. The whole experience is subtly less premium. If Apple keeps the 17e at 60 Hz, it's a deliberate move to protect the Pro lineup. They'll talk about battery life or product differentiation, but the reality is simple. Higher refresh rate is the one feature you feel every single time you touch your phone. Option 2. Apple shocks everyone and puts a 90 Hz display on the iPhone 17e. If that happens, you don't overthink it. You don't hesitate. You buy it. Because at that point, what are you getting with the standard iPhone 17 that justifies an extra $150 to $250? Slightly nicer materials? Maybe an extra camera trick or two? For most people, that won't matter nearly as much as the same generation processor. The modern dynamic island design, an OLED screen, a better selfie camera, and a higher refresh rate that makes everything feel faster and smoother. If Apple actually gives the 17e a 90 Hz display, the entire lineup becomes hard to explain logically. Their own mid-range phone would undercut not only Android, but also the standard iPhone in a brutal way. And that's exactly why many people think Apple won't do it, because a 60 Hz screen is the one obvious place. They can hold the 17e back and still call it amazing for the price. Here's the thing though. Even if Apple plays it safe and keeps the 17e at 60 Hz, it could still be the best value iPhone of the year. You're getting flagship level performance. A modern look with dynamic island, old contrast and color, and a legit front camera upgrade for hundreds less than an iPhone 17 Pro or a Max out. Android flagship. So what should you actually do? If you haven't bought a phone yet, wait. Do not drop $800 or $1,000 on a new iPhone right now if you don't absolutely have to. The iPhone 17e's launch is close enough that waiting could save you a lot of money or get you a much better deal. If you already bought an iPhone 17 and you're feeling a little sick hearing all this, you're not alone. Apple counts on early adopters to pay more for less value. That's the loyalty tax. You're paying to have the phone first, not necessarily to have the best value. If that's you, drop a comment saying played, so we can see how many people feel like they got caught in this cycle. You're not dumb, you're just part of the group Apple knows it can rely on to buy early.